Sacramento, and I oversee the current planning group, the group that processes private development applications that ultimately go to Planning Design Commission and or City Council. So I'll be going through a PowerPoint presentation with you all today, updating you or providing training on our new planning and development code. But before I get started, I'd like to make some introductions to some of our other staff that are here. First in the back, Max Fernandez is our department director. Everything we do is through Max's direction, so he's got the ultimate responsibility for new code. It's all one. Also, here, Joy Patterson, she's a principal planner and also our zoning administrator. Greg Taylor's our urban design manager and our design director. So when we get to the section where we talk about design director level hearings, Greg will be the hearing officer. Of course, Joy is zoning administrator, she'll be the hearing officer for zoning administrator hearings. In the back, Tom Pace, our principal planner who oversees the long range planning group and was the project manager for our new planning and development code work and overseeing the staff. To my right, we have Roberta Deering, who is our preservation director. So preservation director level hearings and staffing the preservation commission is Roberta's responsibilities. Stacia Cosgrove is a senior planner with the city, and she oversees, she reports to me and oversees current planning applications in the central city and East Sacramento. And then Sandra Yope is a senior planner. She is the senior planner over zoning administrator level files, and she reports to Joy, and she supervises the staff that ultimately take projects to the zoning administrator. And last but not least, Jim McDonald just entered the room. He's a senior planner that works for Tom Pace. Jim also was instrumental in the work done on our planning and development code. And I cannot not introduce Teresa Henge, who did all the real work. So the rest of us will take credit and we'll do the training, but Teresa was the person at the computer, long hours and weekends getting this code in place. So with that not brief introduction, we'll get into to our training session. I'm going to talk today about three key components to our new planning and development code. First, I'll give you a little background of while we're here today. I'll go over many of the key changes to the new planning and development code. I'll talk about process changes, and then I think the majority of our time, hopefully, depending on my long-windedness, we'll have time for questions and comments, because it's really an interactive session, so we want the general development community and all the city stakeholders to understand what this new code means to development in the city of Sacramento. So on April 12th of this year, our city council adopted the new planning and development code. At that time, the effective date of the ordinance they set for September 30th. So in 2.5 weeks, on Monday, September 30th, this will be the new official zoning regulations for the city of Sacramento, land use and zoning regulations for the city of Sacramento. The council did this for several reasons. We've been doing a lot of work over the last several months. We have had software upgrades and updates that we've had to put in place. We have all of our forms are being revamped. We have adopted a new fee schedule to go along with some of the changes that we've made that will take effect shortly after the code takes effect. We have been doing a lot of internal training with our staff, because on September 30th, what we want to make sure is that when the public comes to our front counter, I don't want to say we don't want to not have any confusion, but we want to absolutely minimize the confusion on that first day. So we've been doing a lot of staff training. Now we're into our stakeholder training phase. Today's the first of 3 training sessions. I'll let you all know that this session is being recorded. We're going to have it available on our website, so folks that can't make it to one of the 3 training sessions can watch this. So make sure you ask good questions when we get to the end, because you'll be helping everybody in the city by asking good questions. And also, I'll point out, we've taken the last 6 months or last 5 months or so, as we've gone through and trained ourselves on how to use the code. We've also identified a few little, errors and omissions here and there in the code, some things that we thought would make it an improved document on implementation day. And the council will act on that next Tuesday. So very shortly after September 30th, there'll be a few minor tweaks that ripple through the code. So let's jump into the first topic, and that is the key code changes. So one of the the main things you'll find when you start navigating this new code is that we've reorganized it. Those of you that have experience with our existing zoning code know that the first thing you do, well, actually, let me go through the four key code changes, and then I'll get into the reorganization. So I'm going to talk about reorganizing the code to make it easier to use. We've updated several of our zoning designations to provide it improved consistency with our 2030 general plan. We've created a new, consistent, citywide site plan and design review process. And finally, we've updated our parking regulations. And I'll talk about this today, although we updated our parking regulations 6 months ago. That was really phase one of this whole grand code modification. So our reorganized code. So those of you that have experience with our existing code, you know when you get into the document, you get into the zoning code, you look up your land use is the first thing you do. What do you want to build? A bakery, a retail store? You find that on our multi-page, maybe a dozen pages or more land use chart. You cross-reference to the zoning designation that your property lies within, and you most likely will find a footnote, one of 90 footnotes. So then you navigate to that footnote to see what special conditions there are. And then once you find those special conditions, you go to the development standards. You go through to find your height, setback requirements, etc. And then you can start kind of putting together a picture of what you're allowed to do on a particular piece of property. We've changed that. Now what we've done is you go to your zoning designation. So I'll point out that you have your, I think it's the top handout, how to use the planning and development code. Step one, find your zone. Find the zoning designation that your property's in. That zoning designation is going to provide you a table that shows you what are the allowed uses in that zone. So there'll be a table that says what uses are allowed by right. There'll also the second part of the table will be what uses are allowed as conditionally. So you may need a conditional use permit. We've changed some terminology from our existing, as we go forward. We now call what we've historically called special permits, which are use permits, conditional use permits. But I think it's probably more consistent with the majority of jurisdictions in America, to be honest. So I think that will make it easier for folks to understand that you have a particular use that needs a conditional use permit. You're going to go through an entitlement process, and that use will be allowed based on meeting certain conditions, primarily operational. In each zone, you'll find height, density, lot coverage, floor area ratio requirements, and you'll find setback requirements. So it's really one-stop shopping to get a good understanding of what you want to build on a site. You go to that zoning designation and look at that. So in each of these zones, you'll notice that we probably have a lot fewer land use definitions. So what we've done is we've consolidated many of our land uses that exist today in our, like I said, we have 12 pages of land use charts. So this table gives you an example. So those 7 uses at the bottom 2 cells of the table, bakery through secondhand stores, have all been consolidated into a retail store. So I think that's going to make it a little bit easier to navigate. If there's questions, our definitions section of the code will explain what uses fall within a retail store. So I think it's just going to make it a little bit easier for folks to navigate. Step 2 on your handout talks about special regulations, and I failed to mention that on the back of that handout you have a list of chapter and articles for all of the different zones that we have and all of the special use regulations. So these use regulations take the place of those 90 footnotes. So we've consolidated 90 footnotes into 32 special use regulations. So for instance, alcoholic beverage sales, drive-in restaurants, temporary residential shelters. Those are just a few of the uses, 3 of those 32 uses that we have special considerations that we'll look at. So if you have a use that's listed in that list, you know there are going to be some additional standards that we're going to apply to a project. So consolidating these zones and bringing, and one of the things in addition to consolidating the zones, we've aligned a lot of our standards to be consistent with the general plan. Our 2030 general plan has certain development regulations, floor area ratio, height requirements that previous general plans never had. So it gives a little bit more instruction on the form that buildings need to be developed towards. This new zoning code provides more consistency with our general plan. You'll see that we think we really are striving to encourage infill development. As we get into some of the particular commercial zones and office zones, you'll see that we're allowing for a greater mix of uses by right. It's not as hard to integrate retail and office space into residential mixed-use projects. We've allowed for greater heights, reducing setbacks. So I think the thought is that we're trying to maximize the ability to use some of these infill sites, giving more of the property to use, fewer restrictions, more flexibility as you move forward. So hopefully we'll allow more efficient use of the land. That will translate into a better chance that infill projects are economically feasible. And also an important thing, throughout our code, we're allowing for more by right housing. You'll see that that's a common theme is housing throughout the zoning code is encouraged and allowed more than ever. So now I'm going to talk specifically about our commercial and mixed use zones, some of the changes to the C1, RMX, C2 transit overlay, and RMX overlay. So again, the changes that we've made to development standards, we're allowing for more flexibility. And when this says flexibility and density, it means greater density, more units per acre are allowed than we have in the past. We're allowing greater height in certain areas. Setbacks have been modified, reduced in many instances. We're allowing, again, housing by right in some of these zones. So we're hoping that along our transit corridors, or our commercial urban corridors and our commercial centers, that by allowing a greater mix of uses and more flexibility in your development standards, that it'll be easier to develop those properties. Changes in our office business zone. Right now we have one zoning designation for office, and that's the OB zone. It's fairly limited in what you can do. It's probably not a prevalent zone throughout the city. So what we've done is we've added 2 additional zones. We've allowed residential uses and commercial uses by right in the office zone. And these 2 new zones, the OB2 and OB3, are set up with development standards that will facilitate mid-rise and high-rise development. It's a little more tailor-made, so there are no properties, there will be no properties zoned OB2 or OB3, but this zone will be available, so anybody that wants to take advantage of the development standards and regulations in those zones, we have that as a tool in our toolbox to hopefully facilitate that type of development. Changes in our multi-unit residential zones, so the R4, R4A, and R5. We've increased allowable heights, we've increased allowable densities, again, provide more consistency with our general plan. Our general plan has fairly aggressive density and intensity ranges, allowances. So now our zoning is going to match that general plan. Also, we're making it easier to mix uses in commercial and office uses in the urban areas on residential projects in these zones. Mixed use, more activity, better transit supportiveness, aligning with the goals and policies of our general plan. And again, you'll hear that as a recurring theme. So site plan and design review, the next topic. This is a brand new process to the city. So for the first time, we're oh, I'm sorry if this slide doesn't match up to the slide I had yesterday. That's okay, Teresa. So we're creating a new citywide design review process. This implements over the years, we have heard from our city council that site design review is spotty in the city, and there are certain areas in the city that don't require design review, and there has been a desire to have better oversight on project design. So we've created the site plan and design review process to create a consistent citywide process for reviewing site plans and design projects. And I'll get to this in a few slides, but generally, only large projects will end up going to our Planning and Design Commission. The majority of projects will be heard at lower levels. And that's what this slide is for. So as you can see, this is I would say that this pyramid represents the volume of projects that we anticipate processing. The majority of projects will be heard at the staff level. Projects that are consistent with development standards, projects that are consistent with adopted design guidelines will be able to be reviewed at the staff level. Director level review. If a project does not meet adopted design guidelines, or if a project needs to deviate from a development standard by less than 50% of that development standard. So if you have a 10-foot setback and you want to reduce that to 6 feet, that's less than a 50% reduction, so that would be considered a deviation that can be heard by one of the directors. Again, you can see on the your right, preservation director, design director, zoning administrator, or planning director. And then what we anticipate the fewest number of projects would be heard at the commission. The threshold for a site plan and design review entitlement to go to commission would be a 60-foot tall building. And again, you have a second handout. I failed to point this out. The second handout provides a lot more detail on the site plan and design review process. I'm just probably giving you a quick summary of what's on that sheet. So that sheet will break down staff level, director level, commission level criteria. So if a project is 60 feet or greater in height, 150 dwelling units, it's a non-residential or mixed-use project greater than 125,000 square feet. If the deviations from any of the development standards are greater than 50%, if you have a setback requirement and you want to have 0 setbacks, that will bump you up to a commission level hearing. Or if there's other commission level review, if it's associated with a rezone, if it's associated with a conditional use permit, that triggers a commission level review. I'm going to go through 3 examples of projects that have been approved and constructed at the city, all of which I believe went up to our planning commission or design commission at the time. And to give you an idea, so you see the development statistics up above. It's 1801 L Street. So today, if this project came in, it would go to our planning and design commission. It's over 125,000 square feet, and it's over 150 residential units. 700 K Street. This project has been approved, and they're working through the improvement plans. Hopefully, we will start seeing construction soon. It is over a few of the thresholds, but the one I want to point out is it has some of these buildings are historic landmarks. That will trigger preservation commission review. So although it triggers the site plan and design review, the historic landmarks in conjunction with those 2 thresholds kicks it to the preservation commission. The Cathedral building at 12th and K Streets. This project is below those commission level thresholds, and also no deviations from the development standards, no deviations from adopted design guidelines. This project today would go through staff level review at the city. And then there are projects that are exempt from site plan and design review. There's a little list it's almost a footnote on the second page of your second handout. It talks about what projects are exempt. So the director has the authority to determine that some minor alterations are exempt. That list also gives you a list of other activities that are exempt. And we've been creating checklists for several of these minor alterations: roofing, heating, air systems, windows, etc. So when you come to the public counter and you want to make an alteration to a building, we'll have some fairly easy to use checklists that we can go through and determine if your project's exempt from site plan and design review, and then you're off to go get your building permits. So, site plan and design review, citywide design review. We don't have a comprehensive citywide design guideline that we use everywhere. We have existing design review areas. We have planning and developments in some portions of the city. We have special planning districts. we have historic districts, and landmark parcels. For projects that are in one of those areas, and this map gives you an idea, more or less, of the mixture of colors shows some of our design review areas. For instance, north of Thomas, everything in north of Thomas is in a PUD. The majority of south of Thomas is in a PUD. So in those areas, those adopted guidelines are what staff will use to review any projects. So what is in place today for those areas are special planning districts here in the Richards district, the River district. We have design guidelines, rail yards. Those are what we'll use to review projects. For the rest of the city that doesn't fall within any of those districts that have adopted guidelines, the city council has adopted these 4 design guidelines for single family, multifamily, neighborhood commercial corridors, and just recently, this past April, industrial and business park design guidelines. So if you don't fall into an area with a comprehensive set of design guidelines, depends on what your project is. We will use one of these 4 guidelines for the review. Everything will be available on the web, so once you identify if your area is not, if a piece of land you want to do something on is not within one of the design guideline areas, you can figure out what your use is, and we'll have these documents to use, help guide you. Parking ordinance. I mentioned earlier, this was adopted in December of 2012. Originally, this was phase 1 of our grand planning and development code update. We are making, I think, what's been adopted in this April. There's a few minor tweaks, I think mostly improvements to the process we've identified. So there will be a few changes that are effective on September 30th. One of the big changes here is that we've broken the city up into parking districts. So it's no longer, our parking regulations are no longer one size fits all. Parking regulations are less restrictive in our central business district, downtown, along transit corridors. So we have 4 main parking districts. We have the CBD, Central Business District, urban, which is mostly along transit lines and around transit centers, where we're encouraging transit supportive uses and are allowing less parking. Our parking requirements are being reduced. Traditional parking districts, Land Park, East Sacramento, Curtis Park, a few areas around the Power Inn, 65th Street area. They're a little less restrictive than what our current regulations are. And then what we call the suburban parking. That's pretty much consistent. Those areas north of Thomas, south area, Florin, Meadowview area, Delta Shores, those parking regulations are mainly consistent with what we have on the books today. We no longer require parking for non-residential properties less than 6,400 square feet. There's no minimum requirements for listed historic structures, residential or mixed-use components. That's the key there. And then also the new parking regulations provide for alternatives to on-site parking. So you can swap out a certain number, not all, of course, but a certain number of your required parking spaces if you provide additional bicycle parking, if you provide a car sharing program, if you provide a scooter or motorcycle parking spaces. So in the new parking regulations, there's a whole section that describes how you can swap out some of those required parking spaces. Okay, some of our key process changes. So we've made, obviously, changes to our application, all of our forms, or when I say made, will have made by September 30th, changes to everything. Fees, we went through the Community Development Department, the council adopted, I believe it was in late July, a new fee and charge report for our department. So our planning and building fees have been modified. I can tell you that, and specifically for our new site plan and design review process, we had to adopt new fees because we didn't have that process in place before. I can tell you that the majority of fees are not going up. It wasn't a big fee increase. I think the big difference, aside from all new fees for site plan and design review, is that if you have a legislative entitlement, you need a general plan amendment, a rezone, a plan unit development modification, or establishing a planning development, we're now asking for a deposit, and we're doing full cost recovery. So what that means is that large, complicated projects will end up paying more than they historically have. So for instance, general plan amendment was a $20,000 flat fee, and now we're asking for a $15,000 deposit. We will calculate our time, and at the end, if we spend more than $15,000, we will bill for that amount. If we spend less, we will provide a refund. So smaller, less complicated projects, this is going to be a benefit as far as cost. Larger, more complicated projects, our department will find to be recouping the amount of money to pay for the effort we put into it. And then our entitlement processing. Actually, I think our forms. So you'll have a new application. We're streamlining that application. We're making it easier. Less information, I think, not quite as complicated. I know, all of us help applicants fill out that application, and we'll go through it sometimes line by line and say we don't need that information. It's a generic application that at one time we threw everything possibly we thought we would need at the beginning of an application in there, and it's confusing. So hopefully that's going to be a streamlined form. All of our other forms and checklists to help ourselves do our work, we've been updating. And the new fee sheets will be available here soon. So our site plan and design review entitlement. There's about 3 slides here. Since this is a brand new fee, I just wanted to give you an idea as to what some of these small projects will be looking at. So if you have a staff level review, there's no building on the site. You're modifying, you're making changes to the site. Less than an acre, $350. An acre and over, $1,400. This is a flat fee. Staff level review on smaller projects, minor additions or alterations. That's basically an hour worth of work. Single unit and duplexes, $350. So now commercial, non-single unit or duplex uses. So multifamily structures, commercial structures. The fee is based on square footage. So obviously, as you get bigger projects, the amount of effort and work that needs to be done is commensurate with the fee. And so all of these are for staff level. If you have one of these projects that triggers a director level hearing, you're adding a deviation or you don't meet one of the design guidelines, we have a hearing fee. So the director level fee is $1,130. If what you're doing triggers a commission level review, it's $1,808. This money helps recoup the cost of noticing and staff time to attend hearings. And again, these fees that I've just gone over are specific to site plan and design review. The new fee sheet, the new comprehensive fee sheet for all of our other entitlements, I believe that takes effect the first or second week in October. But we'll be making that available right around the September 30th date, so folks can get ready for the new process. So now with our site plan and design review, most projects will require an application submittal for this entitlement, many more than do now. The application submittal will be similar. Again, we're going to have a more streamlined application form. The process will be similar. The information we'll ask for will be similar to what we ask for now. Site plan, staff level approvals. So staff level approvals are not subject to appeal. If you have a project that requires a staff level approval, staff will approve it if there is concern, neighborhood concern primarily. Somebody is allowed to ask the director to reconsider his staff's approval of a project. It's a 10-day period. The director's decision is cannot be appealed. It's final.
7 days.
So what did I say?
10. You said 10. What is 10?
That's what everything else is.
Yeah.
So 10. So even some of these changes we're still figuring out. So it's 7 days now rather than 10. So it's a final decision. So hopefully there'll be a short period of time, and then there'll be finality and certainty on moving forward to building permits. And I'll also point out that there's no longer a call-up provision in our code. Anybody that's been involved in a controversial project knows that projects can ultimately make their way to our Planning and Design Commission, and our current code allows a council member or the mayor to call a project up to city council. So I'll give you an example. If a project had design director approval and was appealed either by the applicant or by a third party, the Planning and Design Commission would hear that entitlement. The Planning and Design Commission would make a decision, and at that point their decision would be final. There would be no appeal from that body. Our current code would allow the council member for the district or the mayor to call that on up to city council and have a city council level hearing. We've taken that provision out of the code. It provides a lot more certainty for folks. You go through the process, your appeal is heard, Planning and Design Commission or Preservation Commission makes a final decision, and everybody has to live with that decision. There's no uncertainty waiting another 10 days to find out what's going to happen with your project. So your third handout is a resource document. So we have our website, we'll have information, planning@cityofsacramento.com. That's wrong, is it planning@cityofsacramento.org?
Oh, .org, sorry.
So you get a bounce back from that one?
I swear.
Yeah, change that to .org. We know that we're going to have a heavy volume as we implement this new code, so we'll be prepared to answer questions. The Planning and Development Code can be found at this website. And I know a lot of people get confused. We have a website for our general plan, and our Planning and Development Code is found through that website. We're working right now with a company that manages the entire city code and publishes it online. They're updating their documents to have it all codified and have it searchable along with the rest of the city code, but that's going to lag a little bit. And then again, we have our city call center, our 311 system that you can contact. And before I jump to the questions, I think I left my sticky note upstairs, but there are a few changes to the code that are just of particular interest, that I'll just give you a few examples. If you're developing near a levee, we have new setbacks for levees. So pay particular attention to those sections. With all of the reports that you read, the situations with North Atomas, the South area levees, the Army Corps of Engineers getting down to the certification, the city, the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, we're all struggling to determine how we deal with development along levees. We put in setbacks from 25, could be up to 50 feet, depending on where you're at along levees. So that has the potential to impact projects. I've mentioned housing is now allowed by right in a lot of our zones. We've really done a good job, I think, of allowing more mixed uses. And another interesting change, tasting rooms associated with breweries are allowed by right now in heavy commercial and industrial zones. So if you have a C4 or an M1 or M2 zone and you want to do a brewery there, the tasting room component does not need a conditional use permit for the tasting room, for the alcohol sales. And there was one more, but again, I forgot. So we are all here to answer any questions that you have.
And there's one more thing that I'm going to put out on the board specifically. It's kind of related to this, but the specific link where you can get the design review special planning district and the citywide design guidelines. So if you want to go right to the design guidelines. So that's what I'm writing.
So I'll